They called him crazy. That no one on the continent could dream such a big dream, unless he had seen the future burning in the darkness. Ibrahim Traoré, a young officer who rose from the dust of Burkina Faso, did not just dream of light. He vowed to light it, not just for his homeland, but for a continent that had been left in the darkness of poverty and dependence. $800 billion. A figure that would make empires laugh, that would make the Western media call him a dangerous dreamer. But that darkness has lasted too long. If you believe it is time for Africa to rewrite its own destiny, like, comment and subscribe. This is not just a story about electricity, it is a story about freedom. According to a Bloomberg Africa report April 2025, the $800 billion hydropower project initiated by Burkina Faso is the largest energy plan in the history of the continent, which could transform the whole of West Africa within a generation. The Pan-African Development Agency PADEV calls it the new heart of the continent, while many Western media outlets describe the project as imperial fantasy. But outside the conference lights, in lands that have never had electricity, a revolution is quietly brewing. And the one who ignited it, a young warrior in military uniform, who is willing to bet his life on a vision that the world calls crazy. Ibrahim Traoré. In the beginning, there was only darkness. Not the darkness of night, but the blackness of abandonment. In rural Burkina Faso, from Didougou to Gawa, from Kaya to Ouahigouya, when the sun sets, the world disappears. No lights, no electricity, no hope. Children study by the light of half-burnt candles. Mothers cook on wet wood, hospitals don't have enough electricity to store a bag of blood. A landlocked country, with few resources, unfavored by trade routes. And in that darkness, a child is born in Bobo Dioulasso, with eyes that stare into the night as if knowing that light will be his destiny. That child is Ibrahim Traoré. A soldier doesn't need power. He needs a goal. Traoré, 2023. At the headquarters of the Revolutionary Youth Movement. Child of the Dark Nights. Traoré's childhood was spent with his mother in a tin-roofed house, where the dry heat melted away his dreams. Every time the power went out, he heard his mother sigh, and the neighbors bringing out their fans into the yard. And each time, a thought sparked in his mind: we don't deserve to be left in the dark. When he grew up, he joined the army, not to kill, but to learn. That's where he began to understand power systems, energy lines, and the fact that Africa doesn't lack electricity, it just lacks control over it. During a defense strategy class, a French professor lectured on EU energy security. Traoré raised his hand and asked a single question. If Europe is afraid of power shortages, who is turning off Africa's electricity? No one answered. Energy maps of pain. Burkina Faso, a country where 80% of the population lives in rural areas, had access to electricity in 2021. In some areas, only 1%, according to the International Energy Agency. Children cannot study after 6 p.m. Patients die for lack of ventilators. Women give birth by the light of their phones. Worse, every kilowatt of electricity generated depends on imported fuel and the old grid left by the French colonialists from the previous century. When the power goes out, people do not complain. They bow their heads, as if the lack of electricity is their fate. But that fate has met someone who does not accept it. Oath in the dark. In 2022, after political upheaval and a failure to ensure national security, Traoré took power in a military-backed transition. The world called it a coup. The people called it a last chance. In the first speech, there were no flowers, no festivities. Just a single sentence broadcast over the loudspeaker. If we cannot light ourselves, we cannot light the way for anyone else. It was not a metaphor. It was a strategic statement. Seeds from the Mohoun. The Mohoun River, a tributary of the Black Volta, flows through the central-western part of Burkina Faso like a forgotten lifeline. For years, people used it to bathe, cook, and irrigate their rice fields. No one thought it could feed an entire continent. Only one thought otherwise. At the end of 2022, after an inspection tour of Bale province, Traoré stood watching the rushing waters, then turned to his energy advisor and said, "If this water can destroy mountains, it can also destroy chains." From that statement, the West African Free Energy Grid project was born, a plan to build 11 giant hydroelectric dams along the Mohoun River, connected to a transnational smart grid, covering 15 West African countries. Why $800 billion? Many people ask, how can Burkina Faso, a poor country, dream of $800 billion? The answer lies not in the budget, but in the belief and strategy to confront the old financial system. Instead of borrowing from the IMF or the World Bank, which always come with conditions of cutting subsidies and privatization, Traoré went to Iran, Cuba, Brazil, countries that had been sanctioned by the West but still maintained their autonomy. They did not bring money. They brought engineers, builders, machines, designs, and the belief that Africa could stand up for itself. That is what colonialism never taught. A new ecosystem, dams, networks, trust. Each dam is an engineering marvel, over 100 meters high, resistant to storms and floods, regulating the dry season, and providing electricity to millions of people. Each dam is connected to an AI-controlled network that distributes electricity in real time to schools, hospitals, factories. Not just electricity, but the ability to produce continuously. Rice is grown year-round, factories are started, 3D printers are installed, vocational training is popularized. The light that Traoré promised is no longer a light bulb. It is an ecosystem of hope. From personal dream to collective fire. In a closed cabinet meeting, when the project was only 10% launched, a minister asked, "Mr. President, what if we fail?" Traoré simply responded with a smile and a sentence. "If the first light comes on, we have won." If you have ever lived in darkness, whether physical darkness or the darkness of despair, you will understand why a single light can be a revolution. Share your thoughts in the comments. Because light does not belong to anyone, it is the right of all of us. Dam number 1, Kodagu, was started just 93 days after the first blueprint was drawn by hand on a piece of rough paper. Many people did not believe. They said, "What can Burkina Faso build?" They did not understand that, for a people accustomed to murky water, to darkness and to the silence of the world, faith is also a form of fuel. And when faith burns, concrete also turns into light. Within just 1 year, 4 dams were built, each a living symbol of the so-called mechanical sovereignty, designed by Africans. Calculated by African engineers, poured by African hands. We don't hire French contractors. We hire ourselves. Infrastructure Minister, November 2024. Alliance of the Excluded. As the world turns its back on him, Traoré turns to the names that the global system once mocked: Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, Brazil, Algeria, Zimbabwe. In Havana, he shook hands with engineers who built a sanctions-proof health network. In Tehran, he persuaded turbine plants that operated during the resistance to Saddam to send him miniaturized hydropower technology. And in Brasilia, the designers of dams on the Amazon agreed to transfer their entire model of a rain-adaptive grid, as long as Burkina Faso committed to training local engineers. Traoré didn't want to borrow money. He wanted to borrow knowledge, share independence, and learn to stand on his own 2 feet. Engineers, not soldiers. While many military leaders spend money on weapons, Traoré founded the Open Tech Institute ITO, where every blueprint, every technology, from turbines to water sensors, is publicly available and open source. Hundreds of students from Niger, Mali, and Togo flocked to Ouagadougou to learn how to run an AI-powered dam using only laptops and 3D printers. At one class, the young Nigerian professor taught the lesson with a single sentence. Light comes from data. And the data, for the first time, is ours. It's a simple philosophy, no African country needs permission from a foreign country to learn how to light itself. Smart grid, the heart of the revolution. Unlike traditional systems, Burkina Faso's new grid does not run in a straight line, but spreads, routes. Each energy node has the ability to distribute flexibly, based on actual demand. If a village loses power due to a storm, the system automatically directs the flow of electricity from other regions, reducing the surplus, boosting the emergency, all controlled by open-source artificial intelligence, trained by Burkina Faso students themselves. No European company controls the software. No servers are in Switzerland. All the data is in the continent. The giants begin to whisper. When the fifth dam, Kangusi, began operating and providing stable electricity to 3 neighboring provinces, the international media could not ignore it. The Economist published, Traoré's fantasy turns real. Le Monde admitted, Continent énergétique, l'Afrique écrase ses propres plans. CNN ran a short news story, Can Burkina Faso really power West Africa? But at the same time, the giants began to feel uncomfortable. French energy giant EDF pulls out of infrastructure investments in Ivory Coast. Italian giant Enel abruptly cuts off its power line maintenance contract with Ghana. Some Western countries quietly apply diplomatic pressure, making it a condition of democratic stability to keep aid flowing, even though no one has ever asked the people of Burkina Faso if they have electricity. They said we can't. Now they say we shouldn't. Traoré, closed session, February 2025. Sovereignty is worthless if it doesn't work. Traoré knows, dams can be built. But if they don't work, if they lose control, they'll all become museums in the desert. So he has enacted an unprecedented policy. Every citizen has the right to participate in monitoring the power grid via a phone app, where they can report outages, check their area's electricity, and even give their opinions on local energy development. Sovereignty, in its new definition, is no longer a matter of leadership. It is a matter of the people. The network spreads, the dream spreads. In 2025, Dam 7 successfully connects to the power grids of Mali and Ghana. Malian children study at night for the first time. An industrial park in Togo runs on clean electricity for the first time. An AI center is built in Niamey, Niger, where computers are powered by hydropower from the Mohoun River. Burkina Faso, once known for its violence and poverty, is now called the hub of West African energy coordination. A war without guns, but full of losses. But no revolution is without enemies. Western banks have begun to tighten up on project-related transfers. Some shipping lines refuse to ship equipment to Burkina Faso. Human rights watchdogs have suddenly accused the government of repressing communications technology for not allowing foreign companies to collect data from the national grid. They don't mention that these same companies have been mining data without sharing the benefits. The position is clear. At the West African Energy Conference in April 2025, Traoré stood before hundreds of delegates. Not using PowerPoint, not speaking in French, but in his native Moorish language. And he said, "We didn't build these dams to impress. We built them so that we no longer have to apologize for having been in the dark for so long. If you believe that light is a human right, and should not be controlled by profit or power, share this story. Let the world see that when Africa takes matters into its own hands, all boundaries can be broken." They stopped laughing. They started to fear. And when the former rulers started to fear, they resorted to the same old methods: slander, destabilization, and calling the light a threat. In June 2025, a BBC World Special was headlined, "The Wave of Energy Authoritarianism, is Burkina Faso turning into Africa's North Korea?" There was no evidence. No on-the-ground interviews, not a single mention of electrified hospitals, reopened schools, or millions of children no longer studying in the dark. There was only fear that a country once in darkness was now demanding control of the light. The one who demanded the light was called a threat. Western media outlets took turns attacking Traoré. Le Figaro described him as a revolutionary with extreme xenophobia. The Guardian called dams a dangerous geopolitical weapon in the hands of those who cannot control themselves. What they dare not say is what Traoré understands. As long as Africa depends on their electricity, Africa will continue to speak their language. When Africa has its own electricity, it will speak its own language. Soft fences, hard pressure. No need for bombs. The West responded with invisible fences. International banks such as BNP Paribas and Crédit Agricole froze all technical transfers related to the dam project. Visa and MasterCard refused to process payments for AI equipment ordered by Burkina Faso from Asia. Software companies such as Oracle and SAP suspended support for smart grids, citing security concerns. Traoré did not complain. He issued a directive. From today, buy nothing that cannot be repaired. Use nothing that cannot be learned to create. Students and farmers strike back. The day after the Oracle system went down, 42 young engineers at the Open Technology Institute rewrote the entire dispatch software in the Rust programming language, chosen by Burkina Faso itself. When Japanese equipment was banned from export, farmers in the Kambasiri region joined local technicians to 3D print replacement parts from recycled plastic. In a country that once lived by patience, innovation became a weapon, and electricity became a manifesto. G7 holds emergency meeting for a West African country. On July 20, 2025, at the G7 summit in Italy, a secret topic was put on the table. The geopolitical implications of the Mohoun hydropower project. The foreign ministers of the EU, Canada, and the US expressed concern that Burkina Faso was disrupting the African energy balance, setting a bad precedent for alliances with non-Western regimes, weakening the democratic influence in the region. None of them had been to Kangusi to see the first lights come on in the night. And then they counterattacked with the Nobel Prize. In a surprise move, the Norwegian Peace Committee announced that it would consider awarding the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize to an African organization called the Energy Balance Alliance, headed by a French-born academic who calls for breaking the monopoly of the Burkina Faso project and sharing control of electricity. It's another way of disempowering, awarding the prize to those who call for power to be shared with those who have just won it. Traoré did not respond. But millions of people did. People speak with action. In Ouagadougou, more than 200,000 people marched with the slogan, Nous n'avons pas peur du soleil, we are not afraid of the light. In Bamako, people painted the Mohoun Dam on a wall as a symbol of liberation. In Abidjan, dozens of young people climbed onto the roof of a newly electrified school, holding signs that said, electricity is a right, not a gift. History has proven that once people touch what they have dreamed of, they will not give up. Traoré, alone but not lonely. In a brief press conference, when asked if he was afraid of being internationally isolated, Traoré simply said, "When you live too long in the dark, everything other than the light seems isolated. But in fact, it is just the light that is not familiar to the eyes." He is not alone. Behind him are 1.5 million workers building dams, millions of students learning to program the power system, and 15 West African countries starting to connect to the grid following the Burkina Faso model. The world is forced to adjust its perspective. When the 10th dam was inaugurated, Burkina Faso exported electricity for the first time to Benin and Senegal, two countries that once considered this project fiction. At the United Nations Climate Summit COP29, Burkina Faso was invited to speak as an independent clean energy modeler. Western corporations are forced to adjust their investment strategies, looking for ways to return to equal partnership, a phrase that was once a laughing stock in diplomatic documents. The pinnacle is not electricity, it is spirit. The story is not just about the grid. It is not just about dams or solar panels. The story is about self-determination. About a small, landlocked country with no precious resources, no powerful military, that dares to redraw the global power map. With light. If you believe that light should not be controlled by power, leave a word. A sentence. A voice. Because for the first time in generations, Africa is not just demanding light, it is creating it. In August 2025, the country fell into an eerie silence. Not because of a power outage. But because, for the first time, light was betrayed from within. At dam number 9, called Potential, the power system suddenly went down for 3 hours. A strange software error caused the entire power distribution system in southwestern Burkina Faso to go offline. More than 120,000 households were plunged into darkness. It was thought to be an accident. But the secret investigation that followed shook the entire government. The software error was no accident. The malware was installed from a device located in the office of the Minister of Energy. A traitor from within the ranks. That person, a senior engineer once trusted by Traoré, sold system information to a private European company, in exchange for a residency visa and $2 million sent to an anonymous account in Dubai. When he was arrested, he said only one chilling sentence. You can build dams. But you cannot protect data. It was not just a betrayal of technology. It was a stab in the heart. The Emergency Council, keep the power or keep quiet. On a rainy night at the presidential palace, Traoré met behind closed doors with 7 people, the security advisor, the chief engineer. 2 former guerrillas, a journalist, a Muslim cleric, and a Mossi ethnic minority. The question was: should we keep this information secret, or should we make it all public, even the shame? After 2 hours of silence, Traoré nodded. We are not fighting to replace darkness with shade. The truth, however ugly, must be bright. The whole country is informed. The next day, the government held a national press conference, broadcast live on all stations. The identity of the traitor is revealed. The malware is made public. The full fix and new anti-intrusion process were announced. Traoré stood before the people, not shying away. It was my fault. I trusted someone who did not deserve it. But I will not let a small crack break our great dam. The people did not react with anger. They reacted with solidarity. In Kangusi, people painted on the wall an image of a cracked dam and hundreds of hands holding it together. At the university in Ouaga, students created a campaign called Code of Light, a community-sourced code for controlling the security of the power grid. In times of trouble, the light does not go out. It shines brighter. When dam number 11 is completed, the new anti-intrusion system will be fully deployed. Traoré did not speak at the inauguration ceremony. He simply placed his hand on a stone tablet engraved with the following sentence. Light without truth is an illusion. But when light is accompanied by truth, that is the future. Not every country has uranium. Not every place has oil, gas or quantum technology. But every people has one thing in common, the desire to see each other clearly in the light. Ibrahim Traoré did not build dams just to produce electricity. He built walls between a dependent past and an active future. From the drops of Mohoun water, he created a new historical flow, where the people of Burkina Faso learned for the first time that light was not a gift from abroad, but the result of their own hands and blood. They did not bow. They did not sell themselves. And when the darkness returned from within, they did not tremble. They only lit up more. Freedom is not transmitted by electric cables. It is transmitted by the spirit of indomitability. Globe showing Europe Africa. If you feel that Ibrahim Traoré's light has touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Raised fist, because this is not just a story, it is a call for an Africa to stand up for itself. Fire now, it is our turn, let's keep the flame burning together.